2.5 years of being told to think outside the box to solve the user problem, I started to go, if enough users are confused about this, maybe the box is wrong. There's this concept of infinity stones, and that stone has a superpower. And to me, I think product managers possess that reality stone where you materialize things that were ideas and conceptions.
Welcome to Product House. And this is another special episode for the PM Spotlight, the story behind the product manager's job descriptions, career journeys, and the reflections.
Each episode, we're sitting down with different kind of product manager, from startups to enterprises, from growth to ops, and even content creators who are their own product, to understand and unpack what the role really looks like on the ground. Just a disclaimer before we get into it, names and organizations mentioned have been anonymized just to protect privacy.
And this time we have another product friends actually joining us. We have Diane here.
Welcome, Diane. So quick introductions. Diane is a product manager who's walked the full SaaS journey end to end. She started her career in customer support, a grounding that has given her a deep appreciation for what customers need and challenges that they face. From there, she's moved through sales, execution, and data, and now is a senior product manager in the B2B SaaS space. The path means she not only understands how products are built, but also how they're experienced from the front line. So welcome, Diana.
Thanks, guys. Excited. Yeah.
Let's just get into it. So the first question is, what's your go-to comfort food?
Soup noodles.
Bread and butter.
Yeah.
And then it's chicken rice.
Nice.
Okay. Are you an organized chaos or a neat freak?
Organized chaos. I looked organized, but it's chaos inside most of the time.
Is there a category called just chaos?
Okay. Organized chaos as well. Okay. What is one product you use every single day that you couldn't live without?
Slack. Man, a lot of product jobs done through Slack, I would say, at the moment. So Slack.
Nice.
That's true.
My air fryer?
Kit went in a very different direction. I see.
That's good. That's perfect. That's a product. That's a good direction. Well,
stuff.
I was going to say pillow, but then now I actually feel like it's ChatGPT. Very sad. Okay, so what is a small daily ritual that makes you happy?
It's making that first cup of tea.
Plain water on with my coffee. One of my dear friends introduced it to me, and I was like, "What is water?" And now every day, the free version of this on New York Times, it's only like one game a day.
Okay.
So every day I would have that with my coffee, and I quite like how it starts my day in that way.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's awesome. I think my one is really boring. Just literally wake up at 5 a.m. and have some of my me time.
You wake up at 5. Oh, really?
Just crazy.
Well, not on the weekend, on the weekday. It's just some quiet time, basically. I think that's my daily ritual. It really made me happy. Hey, last question. If you had the superpower just for a day, what would you pick?
Flying.
Where would you like to fly to?
Different places. I want to travel quite a lot. Actually do it because it requires a lot of money.
Me, teleportation. So flying without the time.
Okay, now my one is exactly the same. But it sounds like everyone wants to do the same because I want to teleport as well from one place to the other to spend more time with my grandma.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, okay. Now, this is all our rapid fire questions. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about who Diane is? What do you like outside of work?
I'm a dancer, not in a very graceful kind of way.
What kind of music do you dance to?
I'm learning how to dance hip hop at the moment.
Oh,
It's pretty cool. I like it because it makes you get out of your headspace. I am a chronic overthinker. So when you're dancing, you can't overthink. You have to be in the moment. You're in the beat. You're executing the move. Whether or not you have it perfectly, you're executing that move, right? Like you can't wait. So that gets me out of my headspace. But overall, I also like the playfulness of it. You're in that space. Nothing like, it's not rigid. It's not number. It's not black and white.
Diane, so you have been the product manager for a while. What's your definition of the product manager's role?
I would say it's kind of like a servant leadership role. You serve the users, you serve the business, you serve the cross-functional teams that you work with, but you also serve your own crew that you work with. Product management requires you to think about what would marketing want, what would the business want, what would tech want, what would our users want, and how do you find a balance and find a win-win for all those different stakeholders.
Yeah, nice. Really excited to kind of deep dive a little bit, maybe as we kind of go through it, because obviously everything you said there resonates, and I think would love to hear some juicy experience around competing priorities and kind of having to try to keep everyone happy, but ultimately make a trade-off between one versus another.
Yeah, that's the secret of the trade. Hey, how do
Yeah.
you do this and how do you do it well? Yeah.
When we first spoke, it sounded like you had a really interesting kind of journey into product management as well. Could you share with our audience a little bit about that?
Yes, this was a 7-year plan. No, just I think the first time product management role caught my eye and the existence of it comes into my awareness is when I was in a support role. I was in a sales role before. I was selling a SaaS product. I wasn't aware that there's such functionality where people are building it. And I just sort of assumed it's just developers building this. But I never was aware there's a role as a product manager. When I was in support, there was a lot of times where we have to think outside the box. We were told to think outside the box to solve the user's problem. This user wants this kind of report. We don't have that functionality. How do you achieve that with other things that we have? How do you build a report outside of the system that doesn't have that report? And part of that, the joy of that role is that you know the system inside out enough to get very creative with your problem solving so that it suits what the user needs. And it's very fun when you're thinking outside the box every once in a while. But when you've got like 300 users asking for the same report and you tell them, we don't have it, but I can think outside the box and I can build outside of it. 2.5 years of being told to think outside the box to solve the user problem, I started to go, if enough users are confused about this, maybe the box is wrong. Who's building this?
Great reflections.
Yeah.
How do I get a say in what shape of this box we are building and who does that? So that's the first time I kind of go, who does this? And then I started to chat internally on like, there's such a role as product management. There's such a role as business analyst and so on. And it was the first time in my life that I feel attracted to a role. And support, I was still finding my ways around what I want to be, which career I want to pursue. But that really excited me, but probably from a very personal space. So if you have been solving user problem 2.5 years for 8 hours a day, you get very personal about user experience. And you're like, I want to have a say in this.
Yeah.
And how I work towards it is mainly because of the domain knowledge that I mentioned. Like you work in this, you know the product inside out. So I started my way in with being a business analyst. I had a chat with the current business analyst and kind of try to understand like, hey, what does this role involve? What is a user story? What is a sprint? I got into the role mainly because of the deep domain knowledge that I have. Because I bring that to the table, I'm able to learn the soft skill, the other side of it, you know? What is it like behind the scene of developing a product? And know the product, it frees me of trying to understand the details of the product. It comes to me quite easy. But to me, the first maybe 3 months of my business analyst role, imagine a non-technical person writing user stories and trying to work with developers.
Yeah.
Main stakeholder, so you need to learn their language. And I have a rolling Q&A with that. There's like a list of questions for every meeting that I'm in. It will be something basic as well, like what's a PR? What's a commit? What do you mean? What do you mean?
That was us when we're coming into everyone coming to the product world as well.
Totally. There was so many times where I was like, what's actually an API? And
it's an API, exactly.
Yeah, and it was just
MCP, the same thing as API. Like
but,
what is that?
It's always those one or two really patient developers who kind of would sit you down with you and just say, hey, this is what it is and this is how you use it and so forth. So I think a lot of PMs who don't come from a technical background, at least, have that same kind of experience of kind of learning. And we owe a lot of it to the patient developers.
Definitely a steep learning curve, but also a very fascinating one because you're like, this world is so different. You know? Yeah. And it also highlighted how much you take your customer knowledge from the product knowledge for granted. Because when you're with your like knows this much about this product and how business use case is like, what the users look for. But when you're in the development world, it's your mind is deep in the code. So you could be coding something, but then you might not know 7 different ways that a user is using this and 7 different things that they're trying to achieve out of this. And I think a lot of people moving from a client-facing role and into a tech environment, I feel that they probably go through the same self-discovery process of like, oh, this knowledge is granted. Like I thought this is well known. And then have to share it with your teams. And then the developer could be like, wait, why would they use it this way? Why would someone do it this way? And then you're like, oh, because it happens here and here and here. So they need this kind of thing. And it was interesting how the knowledge exchange worked.
It's actually very interesting to hear that experience as well, because a product manager has always been branded as the voice of the customer. But now when we're hearing about Diane's story, we realize like a lot of times customer support, like people are really the face and the voice of the customers. And then when you're moving from a customer support to become a product manager, almost like you actually get less kind of insight, further removed from the customer instead of getting closer to it, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
100%.
I love this thread as well because I remember very early in my career, I was at Officeworks and they had this policy. I don't know if it's still around now. This was back in the late 2000s, but you had to spend a day every year working in the store. Everyone had to. And it used to be just really annoying because you just had to interrupt all your plans and everything to actually, go in and feel a little bit lost and kind of help service customers see what things are actually on the ground. But in hindsight, now that I've, learnt a little bit more, like it was probably the best thing that they ever could do in terms of just connecting people who are in the head office to what it actually is that the customer actually sees and feels. Yeah, can't underestimate how much you can learn from that coal-face experience.
Really agree with it. One of the things that I'm carrying as a lesson to myself, as a guide to myself, is that awareness that, hey, there's a lot that I knew as a support person that I assume everybody else does when we're in the product space, which also means that if I were to go to a different domain, I have this awareness that I will not know everything. Customer support will be true source of the customer experience. There's so many nitty gritty details and edge cases and user sentiments and user type that you can't get unless you're in that role and you've developed that sense. So whenever I join a new industry, a new place, a new product, I made it a point to make sure I absorb that information. And like Kiet said, it could be about like, hey, can I just work here for 3 hours today? And you answer. You kind of go, I have no idea what this customer wants, but I'm going to learn it because now I have a course, and how that takes you through what makes sense for the users and what we need to explain maybe unnecessarily. And then what we still need support to explain because it's necessary for a user to get that knowledge, etc.
Yeah.
It boosts, it supercharges you as a PM.
That's really inspiring, like to hear that, because I also always have the memo about every single PM kind of have to using your own product, and you really have to talk to the customers and experience as the customers to really be able to articulate the real pain points there. So I actually wanted to like ask you then, after you move to the product role, so what's your favorite part about this role? What do you love about it?
Are you guys Marvel movie fans?
I know enough about to talk about it.
Same.
And I wouldn't call myself a fan.
So there's this concept of infinity stones, and that stone has a superpower. And to me, I think product managers possess that reality stone where you make things happen. You materialize things that were ideas and conceptions. But the power is with you to bring it forward. And it wouldn't be as simple as like waving a wand. You are given the task and the resources and the place to do it. And I felt that that's impactful, a powerful role to hold. And if we do it really well, it benefits everyone. You can think about how internally the business benefits from you, the team that you work with benefits from you because you plan it very well, for example. You manage the stakeholders really well. It also helped the users, especially in SaaS space. Our impact is amplified, right? Could global user base depending on what product you're working on, and you're talking about people's daily lives. And I felt that that's a task that's quite honorable and impactful to hold.
Wow, this actually give me goosebumps around how you're like thinking about the importance of the role. And then I'm also interested to know, like, what's your day to day kind of like? Is there any kind of a specific day to day activity or task that really fuel you with all the energy or make you kind of super excited?
I think there isn't like a streamlined day, as you guys know, right? Like product management, it just goes, but depending on which stage you're in, it might be number crunching, it might be user interviews, it might be very operational, you're testing things, etc. But the little bits that I like is the problem solving. And the problems comes in so many shapes and forms that you can't say like it's always this or it's always that. And it could go from a really big fire, hey, no one can log in, but this is peak ordering time. What are you going to do? To something small like we can't work out how to make these two features work. Both of them already exist. So you have to find a way to work it, and you have 2 days, for example. But what's fun about it is that it tests your ability to problem solve with what you have and come to terms with the limitations and the parameters really quick, and then know which forces you pull, right? Do you need a developer take in here really quick so that it determines your next step? Or is it more, no, I need everyone in a room now just to decide on the alignment of like, hey, this is the goal that we're looking at. Is that right? Or is it different to like, is there a conflict of interest, etc.? But it's really that you're using all that you know to solve a problem, and it comes in so many shapes and forms. There's no boring day.
It kind of reminds me of an analogy someone kind of told me. It feels like when you're in PM, you're spinning plates. You spin plates on a stick, and you kind of you get to a stage where you're in flow, and you got all your plates kind of spinning, and it just needs one of them to kind of fall, and you feel like you have to kind of start again.
Yeah.
But it also keeps it interesting too.
The bit that's interesting to me in that analogy is that you might be spinning like 20 different plates. There's different ways you're spinning it, but no one really knows how many you're spinning because they only see their plate. Yeah. And then it might fall. But for a product manager, I feel that no news, like not quiet, it's the indicator that you did your job really well. Like no bugs, no fire, nothing. And then you know how much it takes to have the quiet.
Just like a duck on the water. It looks so peacefully, but underneath they're probably paddling extremely fast and trying to make sure they don't sink.
Yeah.
And fingers crossed it's not the silence before the storm.
Well, yes.
I think we're starting to move in that direction, but we'd love to unpack. You're already hinting at what are some of the kind of bigger challenges that you've faced as a PM, and kind of tell the audience around some of those stories.
Okay. One of my latest learning is about how fast I come to terms with what I can't control. And it is challenging for me because I would say you're used to things being predictable. Like my sense of safety is in anticipation and prediction because you're thinking 2 steps ahead and kind of going, this is going to happen here. I need to have the foresight to like prep for this so that by this time when that happens, when that plate falls, you have a cushion underneath because you prep that cushion. The forces that you're moving, the plates that you're spinning has a lot of other factors to it, and it could be something like one of your teammates isn't very good with attention to details, and then it slips through the cracks, and you're like, man, we tried so hard to get it perfect, and now there's this really glaringly bug that make our team look like we didn't cover all the corners, even though we tried really hard, right? It could also be an interpersonal thing where, hey, I'm trying to communicate this vision, but somebody else has a very different one and we're headbutting on it. Or like what kind of vendor, what kind of integration we're going to use. And that decision is taking way too long in your own opinion. And you're like, doesn't matter, we're hair splitting now. We need to do this, etc. But a lot of things that you can't control, I tend to get very frustrated about it's not happening this way. Oh, it's not better. Oh, we should be this way, we should be that way, etc. And what doesn't help me is that I would still be solving the same problem because I'm still trying to get to the same goal. But in the process, I have so much frustrations that it doesn't make it enjoyable for me.
How do you overcome it and make it a slightly better experience for yourself?
Having a mentor who's very good in guiding me through this, manager who's guiding me through this is also very helpful. The first thing is also to see how somebody else did it. So in this case, I was very lucky to have a leader who can pivot pretty quick.
Mhm.
For example, at one point, I was struggling with the team member that's not performing the way that I want them to. And it's about like taking ownership and taking initiative and seeing it through. Like, but you would go away, come back and have that still falling apart. And we were like, how much clearer can I say this? And how much more do I need to spell it out, etc. You have your frustration. Like, surely this is enough. Why aren't you doing this? Right. And would talk to my leader about it, but I can see how he bounced. Oh, that's the problem. We can't fix it with this person. How do we fix it with an alternative? And so he would go, all right, what if we give this task? Let's say it's about giving attention to details, for example. And then we'll repeatedly learn that, okay, this person's not very good with this. Then a really important piece with a lot of details to be nailed down. Then we decided to go, okay, what if we shift it to somebody else who might be more naturally better at this instead of why aren't you better at this? Give them the tools, but then if that's not happening, then why don't you shift it to how else can I solve it instead of getting very frustrated at a certain way a person is. And I
Yeah.
shift in conversation, whereas I've been sitting on it for weeks, right? Just going, why not?
Yeah. Have a different perspective.
And
Definitely helping out.
what I took away from it was how quickly he moves on from recognizing it as a frustrating point to, oh, it is a limitation. That's not gonna, it's not something we can control.
Mm.
We need the outcome soon. So how do we get it some other way? And his energy is spent in solving that quite effectively, whereas I'm sitting in a well of frustrations that for things that I can't control. And I thought, this is something I could just learn so that I'm less frustrated about this kind of thing. The funny thing, guys, is that you would think that from this conversation, so clear, such clarity, I have to learn it again and again and again and again because
Yeah.
stick, like my natural tendency comes back and you're still frustrated. And then you kind of go, wait, we have had this conversation. Challenge, you're frustrated again. And I'm like, I'm frustrated again.
This is something actually really hard as a product manager because me and Kia, we have a multiple conversation around this and even develop a framework around this, right? So it's definitely a skills and to understanding where is our own kind of sphere of influence because everyone in the organization in reality we just have different sphere of influence and exactly like what you say there's always constraints and then these constraints can show up in slightly different forms and of symptom as well. And then sometimes you feel like you recognize them in one form, but then they come back in the other form, you may not realize it. So have the whole experience to stepping back and looking at the system instead of trying to solving that particular kind of constraint again and again is something really hard. But there is something that actually really interesting around because when you mentioned about some of the challenges, which I believe is very common challenging for almost every single PM or like in the world, it's about different opinions. Organization, there's always going to be everyone feel like their priority is the most important things in the world. And then you, as you say, you are the intersection of all of these voices. And then how do you handle with different opinions and different and conflict of priorities?
Yeah, I think alignment is key there.
Yeah.
So I might just take a small conceptual example of it. So let's say what should be our value proposition? How should it be worded? You know, this is where you pick a sentence apart almost to like, oh, this word, we should use it this way because it doesn't represent what we're trying to say and so on. You can see how product management would have an opinion, support will have a different opinion, the stakeholder, the leadership might have a different opinion, marketing would have a different opinion. In this case, I felt that my role as a product manager is to kind of go, one, what are we trying to achieve? And does everybody agrees this? And in this case, okay, value proposition, we need a strong one that really represent what we're delivering, not like a sugar-coated version of what we're trying to say. And we want it clear. So make sure it aligns with everybody first. Then when it aligns, it also becomes quite clear on who will be the decision making. So for example, if it's value proposition that product's dictating,
Yeah.
on the organizational structures, you know how this goes. But let's say if it's quite clear, then we could take the input, but we make the final decision. If it's with marketing, for example, then you also have to have the alignment to kind of go, these are my input, but this is your call.
Mm.
The options that we all really like, but this is your call, and we roll with it because we are a team.
But even you don't agree with the marketing, if the decision making with the marketing, you kind of let you provide your input, but let marketing kind of make the final call because that's where they have the power.
Yeah, the wisdom is in knowing who is best equipped to make this decision and who will deal with it later as well. Because, for example, if it's something that product has to solve, then it's not fair that somebody else is making a decision for consequence that we have to solve. So it's also dependent on that alignment. That's what I was trying to say by alignment. We need to be aligned as a team on what we're trying to achieve, who's in the best place to call this shot, and how do we support it. And I'm also a firm believer that when you're in a team, and not necessarily like product, etc., it's more like, hey, we're in a business, we're trying to achieve something together. Even if you disagree, you voice it out before. But the moment a collective decision has been made, it is your professional responsibility to play support there on. Cool. Then like, if you're going to go between A and B, I recommend B for these reasons. I don't like A for these reasons. But let's say everybody goes with A for their own reasons, because you can never have the same opinion anyways. That's the beauty of like diverse thinking.
Thinking.
There's something really beautiful about the Amazon disagree and commit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you move on from the disagreement to like, we've made the decision now. How do we make it work? How do I play a part to make it work?
Yeah.
And also, I think there's a part about the whole alignment things around that is you align about the decisions and you also align about the consequence of this decision could be. And everyone kind of agree around, okay, this is a risk we are going to take as a business. It's a commitment we made together.
I think what people don't appreciate is how expensive it is in terms of time spent relitigating decisions that have already been made. And if you can't get a clarity in cascading down decision when it's ambiguous, even up top in terms of what's our value prop, if there's 5 different teams have 5 different value props, it doesn't show up to the client, right?
Yeah, there's another analogy around this. Some of the decisions is a rubber ball. You're throwing on the floor, and then if it is wrong, it just bounce back. You just remake that again. You just put it back again, and it bounces to different direction. But some of the decision is like a crystal ball. When you smash into the floor and then break, you kind of don't have a second chance to make the same decisions. So value proposition is a very interesting one. Again, it depends on the organization. Sometimes it's different. In a lot of situations, it is something that you can experiment around, but in some situations you can't. So how to make the alignments around understanding about the impact around this and how to categorize it, I will be very interesting to hear both of your experience around that as well.
This reminds me of an analogy. I learned a similar thing about decision making, but it has a slightly different analogy. So you know how you were talking about rubber ball and crystal ball? Mine, or the way that I was explained to was it's sort of like the type 1 and type 2 decision. Type 1 could be that you're opening a door and going into a room and going, oh, this is the wrong room. Sorry, that was the wrong door to open. Go back out and close and try another door again. So you can make a decision quite easily with very little consequences. The type 2 decision is like jumping off a cliff. Going back, you jump on, you're already midway and you can't be like, nope, that was the wrong cliff.
Right, can we actually changing the directions a little bit? I think every single product manager or even any other role facing at the moment is how do we stay up to date? Because they just have so many new things coming out all the time, every single day. There's news, there's books, there's new methodology, new terms. I'm curious about Diane. How do you, I guess, keep sharp, keep up to date about everything happening?
I don't do it very well, guys. It's one of those things that I'm trying to improve about myself. I don't do it very well in terms of like, let's say AI, right? The latest hot topic is AI. Ideally, you will be going, cool, how do I get across this? And what are the things I need to learn? How do I try and educate myself in a way that's like useful for me? And I haven't found a good ground of doing that effectively for me. So far, all that I do is bits and pieces of like, I'm going to read about this because this interest, like it's almost reflexive instead of like a structure approach. This is why I'm an organized chaos. And that one evening I might be reading about a jobs to be done book for 3 hours because it intrigues me. but the other evening I might not be doing anything productive at all in that sense, and there's no structure to it. It kind of go along with my interest, right?
Based on your structure, then I'm also in the chaos categories then, because I'm 100%. I don't think I have that organized kind of structure
I think
either.
there's not enough diversity in learning here because it sounds like we all just go with whatever interests us. I personally wasn't very good at school, right? So very, very much my problem is how do I keep focus on the job I actually need to do as opposed to the thing that interests me more right now.
Is there any channel or any friends that you usually hear about these trends from?
Charlotte.
Is that how you? Well, this podcast is a way how we actually hear what's happening. Oh, that's what other PMs are learning. So actually, I'm curious about like Diane. Like, do you have like a community or source of kind of information in your life?
No, so this is, like I said, this is why I needed to set out on like networking intentionally, because what I realized, guys, is that all these years, I was half joking about the 7 years plan to get into product management. But basically, you work so hard to get into that position. You got there and you're learning all that you need to learn hands-on. So it kind of like fill you up. But you can imagine me kind of like putting my head down and like really trying to get my things done. And this year is where I go, wait, what is it like for, I'm looking around and going, what is the landscape like? What is the work? What is it like for a PM in New York, for example? And what are the expectations that's quite different to a PM in Australia market and so on? So
what's your biggest discovery? I'm curious. Can you tell me?
I'm learning recently that the expectations of how strategic a PM should be varies from industry to industry. For example, I came from a background of like such a strong delivery focused work, and I think in some bigger companies, my role would be like a product owner, not a PM. Whereas like in other companies, a PM, they expect a PM to kind of go, can you do pricing models and commercial strategic plans and competitive analysis? But yours is very much a strategic focused role. Your day to day is very less operational and testing and working with your developer into like the tickets and acceptance criteria, but you might be looking at data and how you track it and how you price it and where's the market going and where can we go, that kind of stuff. If that was the expectation for certain titles that I didn't realize it. Initially, I just assumed that product manager, they all do what I do. And now I'm realizing there's a lot more to this.
You kind of just described the other proposition about this particular podcast. The reason why we're wanting to do the PM Spotlight is because this role is just so diverse. It's huge spectrum. And everyone's experience, even we might all hold a PM title, our experience, our skills, our kind of career path is completely different.
If anything, it's just getting more and more specialized as well, right? So the trend is...
I feel like there are two schools of thoughts around that. So let's don't make conclusion around that. But I'm curious about what's Kia's opinions around that. When you say more specialized, what do you mean?
I think there's a lot expected of product managers. And broadly speaking, we're talking about one person doing more of the work versus in a situation where we need to scale, where does it make sense to be more vertically sliced in our value chain of what product managers do, and where does it make sense for it to be pulled together? I'm being vague, but I think because if I use specific names for job descriptions, it varies from company and organization and industry to industry, right? But broadly speaking, it's does it make sense as we scale our organization to win? What are the parts that make sense for individuals to do? What are the parts that we actually collectively do?
No, that's a really good reflection. To be honest, this is actually one of the questions. After we finish all these episodes, I would love to do a big analysis about what is everyone see the trends of the PM to go, because I definitely from everyone's interview so far, there's two schools of thoughts. One school of thought is around that become more and more specialized simply because of how big the role actually it is, and especially in US. And there's a lot of other role as well. There's a lot of sales role and the growth role that goes, and UX design role that goes through the same process. Is they go to fill one single title of the role to become very specialized. Then you have designer, then you have UX, UI, product experience and research. You have all of those. And apparently in US, this trend has been happening before. And then, but then they have a big kind of things around, let's just bring all of them together, have a unicorn design. And then I think product manager is also going through the same thing as well. So there's one thought is about we are actually in the process to getting them smaller, be more specialized. But there's another school of thoughts that we're actually in the world about having this concept of full stack product manager that all come back together. So I haven't learned about mine, so I'm curious about, and then every single time I want to hear different product manager talking about it, there's a different answer. So let's see our result of the interview, like what's everyone's view around that as well.
I do think that at its very core, though, like I get what Kiet's talking about with, let's say, depending on the organization and the product's maturity, where we're going with it, you need very different things of a product manager.
Yes.
I still think that at the very core, this is a decision-making role. Like you practice this almost every day. And I think this is one of the things I was thinking about with the prominence of AI coming up. It's still our role, regardless of whether it's operational or strategic, etc. It's still very much how do you make decisions and move forward with it and make sure you're making the call that benefits people. Context, I feel like the context just changed and how you reach a decision just changed depending on what slice you're in.
In terms of looking ahead and what's next for you, what is the one or two goals that you have in kind of acquiring the new skills, or what it means to be Diane in the next 7 years?
Yeah,
Next 7 years planned.
I think a lot of it is what I just mentioned, the self-education. I want to get sharper at it. I'm good at learning things on my own, but I realize that the self-discipline only goes so far. I put myself in a playground that makes me practice that. So for example, if I want to get so much better at utilizing AI and knowledge about AI, I can only rely so much on my own self-discipline and rituals to educate myself. If I put myself, let's say, in an AI startup right now, and Diane, you're the product manager of this, you got to learn this in 3 weeks. So much faster for me to improve. I wanted to focus a little bit more on being quite intentional with like what are the places that I want to put myself in so that I practice what I want to practice. And the other bit is the networking bit that I was talking about. I wanted to learn that broad brush landscape and understand where I want to go. Because right now I haven't experienced being a growth PM, for example. How do you motion modeling and introduce a price change, and how do you think about how much effort's worth it, and what's the ROI and all that kind of strategy.
Yeah, I guess just quickly, the way the grass is not greener is oftentimes you're so in the strategic space that myself personally, I miss actually sitting down with a customer who's using the product and kind of seeing them find the pain points of how they solve their problem with the software, right? When you're just so busy kind of working out where do we play, how do we win, what's the value proposition, that sometimes you miss it. That's for sure.
Really?
And also, I think that's probably one of the best part about the product management, about how big the scale it is, because there's no kind of a better and worse in different part. It's more about it's just like a giant places. There's so many different rooms. It just depends on where you like to locate yourself, where you like to position yourself. If you, at this point of your career, you enjoy a little bit more in this particular room with all your customers, a bit more hands-on, let's go into this room and let's get everything best, learn everything best about it since in this room. But then later on, if you're curious about the other room, you go to the other room to understanding a little bit what they have, what's their skill sets. I guess the important thing is really around to understand what are all the room here, what are all the things that you have in control with, and so because they are all important part of the PM world, and where you want to position yourself at this moment and where you want to go. Because you can't be physically, it's very difficult, especially for a large organization, to position yourself in all different rooms because you're one single person as well, right?
Yeah, and they're hiring you for a specific purpose, right? But I think that the counterpoint as you progress in your career also is some things you have to give up, and you'll get the satisfaction of coaching others to do so and seeing that, you would have taken it down one path, but the person you're coaching has taken it another path and have knocked it at a park better than you would have, right? And that also comes with a level of satisfaction as well.
I see. Would you say, Kiet, that there's certain types that would naturally lean toward more to one side or the other? For example, like I coming from a BA background, I'm very good with zooming in. I can handle a lot of details and a lot of complexity, but quite easily because it's natural. Zooming and like staying in the abstract and trying to get into a strategic place, I have to hone it like almost consciously. But I wonder, what's your take on like if you see a PM with the natural tendency towards, being strategic or operational or being more entrepreneurial or experimental, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like there are certain things about your background that will almost always be an advantage for you, right? Because Charlotte is probably the epitome of this, which is you almost never forget what it means to deliver value for the customer. And it doesn't matter how strategic you get, that is going to be something that stays with you all the time. And I think if you keep what's the benefit for the customer in mind, it's just a matter of balancing, the three Venn diagrams of feasibility and viability for the business. It's just toning that up, right? So I don't think it's there's stuff you can teach. It's your attitude to growth, which you clearly have, that and to learn more, that is harder to see. I don't think you have a problem.
See.
Exactly what Kia says. Stay curious about where you wanted to position yourself and where you wanted to be, and the reason behind that as well. Because there's a very famous book. I can't remember who wrote it, but I remember his other book. It's called "What You Do Is Who You Are" in a way, which is exactly what you say. Like Diane, if you're curious about AI or a particular topic, you want to strategically position yourself in that environment to do a little bit of that work. Then you learn the skills. Then you know, do you truly love it? Then that if you do it enough, that eventually they become who you are. If you do enough of growth work, then you call yourself a growth PM. Later on, you're interested a bit more about the let's say delivery part of a thing. You can call yourself delivery PM. A lot of these boxes, again, this is a box that you're putting yourself in, right? Sometimes the box may be wrong. There may not be the right boxes to describe Diane.
Yes.
Like you decide what shape of boxes you want it to be. That depends on what you do and how do you want to think about it as well.
That's a freeing thought.
Well, now we have an opportunity for you to give us and also maybe the younger Diane a food of thoughts as well. So if you can give a piece of advice to like Diane, let's say 7 years ago, Diane, any advice, what would that be?
I would say learn to watch how I approach the possibility of making a mistake. And I learned this in hindsight. So I don't know that my younger me would have like heard the same thing and absorb it. But I realized that a lot of what I do and what I take time to do comes from this fear of like how I see myself when I make a mistake and how I talk to myself when I take a risk, and that risk mistake, for example. So there's a lot of caution in the way that I approach a problem and the way that I try to solve it. And I realized that it just costs me time. Is it A or B? And I could sit and list down pros and cons on A's and pros and cons on B's. And then I could talk to Kia day and night to go like, Kia, what's your take on it? Charlotte, what's your take on it? And I could like talk myself around it on like that indecision. And sometimes there's no, like you guys said, there's no right or wrong. It's just a choice. And for me to learn to trust that it's my choice and that I will see through the consequences and then that I'll be fine. But getting it wrong doesn't make me a bad person, like doesn't make me bitter. Is the thing that I think my younger self or whoever is starting the journey needs to learn. The mistakes don't make you incompetent. It's the not trying that makes it.
Really well say. That's very well say. And sometimes there's no failure, there's only learning, right? And then and a lot of time, learning is bad we took early in our career. It doesn't have to be early on throughout our career, I guess. Is what shape us.
Love it.
The question.
Yeah. So we're kind of gotten the pointy end of the episode. So the next section is a section we call Paying It Forward. And so what we do is we get a question from previous guests and we ask you, and then off the back of it, we'll ask you to kind of pay it forward and kind of ask a question for our next guest as well. So the question from our previous guest is, how has AI shaped your daily interactions with other people?
I think it introduced a lot of creativity, in a sense that There was a time and space for like memes and gifs and stuff, but with
Still
AI,
is.
AI adds another layer of creativity in a sense that lately one of my friends showed me a picture of her that she uses AI to become a balloon and blow up. In the picture of you, like maybe you'll be like this, but then it becomes really big, like a blow up balloon, and then float away.
Very cool.
And we were giggling about it for hours on that little silly thing. But it's the kind of thing that you cannot do before, even with memes, etc. Right? Right now, I could take a picture of my friend and give her different hairstyles. But in the professional context, it also gives me a tool to describe what I want to do in a more holistic way. So it could be a visual thing that I ask. It could also be I find it quite useful when I'm brainstorming something and I don't have someone with me, and I could just feed something on like, tell me about this in 10 sentences. And then they might just give me 10 sentences, but these are the ones that get my creative juices flowing. And you're kind of going, ooh, I didn't think about this aspect of it. What would I do here if I follow that train of thought? So I quite like how it enriching it can be.
Yeah, nice. It does kind of remind me of the calculator analogy, right? In the sense that it was a very roundabout way. A friend had showed me an article about a New York Times story about possible future jobs that AI creates. And the first thought that came to mind is it's kind of like not calculator, but like DJs, right? Like DJs, some of them don't really know how to play music, but they're very good at remixing others to make amazing kind of creative output, right? And I think AI is the same thing, right? It's just a tool to then, to your point, Diane, it enables access to a lot of different channels and mediums that people will see an explosion in creativity as well.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting, but not everyone will be a Tiesto. So there's only so many amazing, talented people out there.
I'll be curious, like, how does it shape your daily interaction with others these days?
You will be surprised how many cats videos I receive from my moms around how she turning my cats and riding a motorcycle and play drum at the same time. That kind of video every day. So I've never received more these AI generated cat video ever for my family. So
for me, it's like every time I see a picture or a video now, I'm like, is it real? Is it not? So.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the fun part about some of the AI generated video is you definitely know they are not new, but then they're adding a lot of like fun element and breaking some of the ice in in your world as well. Because sometimes before probably if your mom, I don't know about what's your relationship with your parents, but when my parents want to checking on me, the standard conversation is, have you eat? And then are you warm enough? And then how is your job? And then but she doesn't really care about your job. Like when we're actually talking about it, but now it's just like now she can sending you all these creative videos, and then you have a bit more deeper conversation about, what did you using to do it? What's your idea behind that? So you kind of create a little bit more different conversations with it, which is pretty cool.
This actually reminds me. So you know how Kit, you were asking, what would I ask the next guest?
Yes.
Very, I would say, a philosophical question. But now that Charlotte was talking about how your mom asks what you do, how your work is, and she doesn't actually care. Now I have two questions, if that's all right. If you're a product manager, but how do you describe your job to your friends and family, especially your grandma? It's really hard.
Good question.
Do you code? I don't code. Do you design? You don't design. But do you build a product? I build a product. But what do you do then? It's really hard.
I like your Infinity Stone answer. That's probably what I told my grandma. I'm changing the world. But
I just changed the word. I just changed the word. But my other question was something that I wouldn't mind getting answers from you guys as well. Like, what's something that you have to unlearn? Because so much about like learning, but what's something that you have to unlearn to get yourself in a better position, to get you to make sure you grow, like to get to a better version of yourself, or like navigate life in a little bit easier.
Writing this question down, this is two amazing questions. Like I think that's really good.
I'll share a very tangible and practical one. I used to think Scrum was the answer to everything, and that's coming from someone who introduced agile practices to a small team, and it's like it was great. I really enjoyed it. Kind of a Scrum Master / PM type role-ish. And then when I was introduced to the concept of Shu Ha Ri, and which was borrowed from martial arts, it's like you do the form, you get better at it, and then you break the forms to adapt it to yourself. In short, I'm bastardizing the description. But when I appreciated that, actually, it's the outcomes you're trying to achieve with the practices and with the cadence that's more important than actually going through every step by the book. That was a big one for me, and it's horses for courses.
What got you to that point, Kit? Like, were you trying to force a fit with Scrum at one point, and then realize like, oh no, that's not. I need to unlearn this. Like, what triggered that learning?
Yeah, we were doing agile coaching for a lot of organizations, and it was a similar problem space as what you experience around what were our constraints. And we were working with a team who was loosely connected. They just didn't have the same enablers in a standard Scrum team where they're kind of working together. And so I just had to adapt to test and learn and adapt the framework to what would work for them and their scenario. And it was an eye opener in when sometimes actually doing exactly the same works. Other times, so that totally doesn't make sense. Their work is continuous flow, so they don't need to plan every couple of weeks, right? As an example. So it was, I can't say it was a straight line in terms of learning, but there was a point where I was like, oh, actually, there's a lot of stuff they already do that gets the same outcome. Why introduce something new?
Yeah, that's very wise. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I feel like I feel very resonate with that. I feel like this is kind of a very similar journey that every single kind of agile coach turned PM that I guess experience that as well. I think that's why that's why I'm very curious about come from customer support background. I feel like that particular like a role and they give you some superpower and advantage, and they also give you a certain way of thinking, like people from different background they may not have, and I'd be curious about what that is. And I think it's really interesting because that's when Kia is talking about that, it just they have so much resonate. Literally, I feel like, oh yes, I have a very complicated relationship of the agile and the process because of the reason as well, because we both come from a similar world. But then I wanted to answer this question probably in a slightly different angle from what Kia says, so people get a bit variety. So I guess because for my background, I kind of really care about desirability. So I'm someone who also come from a bit more marketing, events, business analyst, and I do a lot of random roles early in my career as well because I'm curious. And then so for me, I always prioritize. If you have a DVF, I will always prioritize the desirability because I'm a people pleaser. Every single thing customer tell me, every single thing stakeholder tell me, every single thing the world tell me, that must be right. If we meet all their requirements, we are going to be so successful. Why we need anything else? So I would do everything to basically like make their other people's dreams kind of happen. So that's always, I feel like that's the missions of the product managers, and at least for my mission for so long. But I think it's a very, very hard kind of journey for me to understanding the importance about all the other aspects like the viabilities and then the I guess the internal politics, then and the importance of the market trends because what's actually happening outside, and then what's the real world, what's the system thing. That's something really hard for me because there was a period of time I almost feel like I wouldn't know if it's a naivety or it's almost like a self-protection mechanism. Is I want to have one single source of priority, which is customer feedback or what my boss tell me. So I only want to prioritize these two thoughts. But now when I actually growing a little bit older, and that's a very hard a process for me to unlearn, is what's actually important. World is much more complicated than that. And then is what my opinion and my judgments based on everything else is really important in these positions. Like where's the money is, where is the market trend telling me, where's the strategy, and what is Charlotte's true instance around this based on everything is actually sometimes more important than what customer or what my boss kind of telling me as well. They are important. They are definitely, they form my opinions. They form my judgment, but my judgment should not only have this source of truth. It need to have everything else as well.
That's I felt that it's almost like a natural learning curve. I feel the same way you do as well. I care and I want to help. Imagine, right, I was in customer support to say, no, we can't do that. Now I'm a product manager. Yes, we want to do it. We can.
Yeah.
That little thing, I felt like at the beginning of that journey is always like, oh my God, now I can help. I'm going to help it. And then you started to get a bit overwhelmed with how there's 1,000 different feedback that wants the same button to be 50 different shades of colors.
Mm.
So that forming your opinion, I felt was part of the journey to get to the place where you're like, hey, I think I have considered it from different angles, and this is my gut feel, and this is what I would do if I have to do it. And I thought that
Mm.
always a journey, never you go from that to here. Like I felt that the original part of, man, I wanted to do it and I can't do all of it at one time was necessary to get here.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, you are right. You're definitely right. It is definitely kind of a part of the journey. I feel like I wouldn't be able to recognize the importance about, I guess, my opinions and also the other factors like marketing and then like business viabilities and everything. And before I go through that journey, it just potentially other people go through different journey because for tech people, maybe their start journey like points is feasibility. So, oh, if is this thing something that I can build this or not is the most important thing. Yes, thank you so much for your time. I feel like you actually left us two very, very good like questions for our future guests as well. And then I certainly get a lot out of this conversation to
Had
hear
a lot of
about
fun.
your
Yeah.
journey.
Me too. Thanks for having me, guys. I feel like the time flies. I learned a lot from you guys' perspective, and I can't wait to hear what other product managers talk about and what their challenges